Okay, so I'm recording now. All right, so last time, okay, we were working on multiplying polynomials. And basically what I did was I showed you first, how to multiply two monomials together. That's the first thing I did. And then what I did was I presented one method you can use to multiply polynomials. I mean, you can just, the method was distribution. And what I'm also showing you is I'm showing you another method called the grid method. Some people call it the box method or the table method. It's just another way to multiply two polynomials together. If whatever method you decide to use is up to you. Whatever method you decide to use is up to you. I just thought this was a little more visual. So I figured it wouldn't hurt to go through it. The grid method. Personally, I like the grid method, but if you want to use a different method, that's fine. And here I'm just writing out the steps for the grid method. Essentially, it's just like the example I did last time. I will do examples today. We form, a grid with rows and columns. So basically, if we have two polynomials, right? We're multiplying two polynomials. The first one of the polynomials, each term you make a column. So for each term, you would make a column. And for the other polynomial, for each term, you would make a row. Okay, so you're going to end up getting grids, as you'll see. And then to get each entry in a missing grid, you would multiply the row and the column entry. You would multiply the row and the column entry. You'll see when we do some examples. I know just reading this process might be confusing. When we do some examples, it should make sense. And then you add up all the grid entries together. That's how you get the actual product. And it's always good to write your answer in standard form. Again, standard form, that's when the exponents of x are decreasing when you write as you read from left to right. All right, let's do some examples because then this will make sense. So here's our first example. We're going to multiply these two polynomials together. So what I'm going to do is this. For the first polynomial, each term here is going to give me a column. Here, let me just bring out the grid. So each term here, as you can see, is giving me a column. And from the other polynomial, each term gives me a row. So again, let me say it again. Each term is giving me a column from one polynomial. From the other one, each term is giving me a row, as you can see. Okay. Now, after making these rows and columns, we have these blank grids. And how to fill in these grids? We multiply the row, the corresponding row and column entry. So here, to fill in this box, fill in this grid, we're going to multiply the row with the column entry, and we get this. Remember, when you multiply, right, you add the exponents. Remember, when you multiply monomials, you multiply the coefficients together. I mean, here they're both just 1, so the coefficient's still 1. And you add the exponents together. Doing so, this is what we get. What about this grid entry? We're going to multiply the first row, the second column terms together. Doing so, we get 6 times x to the 5th. Again, we're adding the exponents of x. For this one, we have x cubed times 1. And what do we get? X cubed. Okay, that's what we're getting. Let me just double check to make sure. Okay, okay, everyone's okay. Trying to make sure no one has any. Okay, good. Good. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. So again, for the next term, for the next grid, here we have 2 times x to the 4. Right? That product is just 2x to the 4. That's all you can do. For this one, we have 2 times 6x squared. When you multiply, right, you have 2 times 6. That gives you 12. And then you have just x squared. Right? Again, when you multiply coefficients. And normally you would add the exponents, but there's no variable here. So we just multiply 2 times 6. And finally, 2 times 1, that gives you 2, right? Row with the column term. Row with column. Okay, now, what do we do next? Well, we're going to take these grid entries and add them together. And that's what's happening here. We're taking all these grid entries and we're adding them, as you can see. And that's what the product is. So again, this is illustrating the process that was on the first slide. Okay. I'm just showing you how to use this method. And notice how the polynomial here is written in standard form. How do I know that? The exponents of x, they're decreasing as we read from left to right. Okay, so that's one example. Let's do another one. So here's our second example. What I like to do personally is the polynomial with more terms. I use that to form columns. So this one has 3 terms, right? For each term here, I'm going to use for a column. And then the other polynomial I'll use for rows. You could go the other way around if you want. So for instance, what you could do is have a column for each of these 2 terms. And then you will have, for each of these terms, a row. But it really doesn't matter. If you do everything correctly, you'll get the right answer. Okay, so from here, right, each term here is going to give us a column, as you can see. From here, each term in the other polynomial, we're going to get a row. Notice I'm including the minus signs, the negative signs. Okay, make sure you do that. Okay, so now we have to get these, missing grid entries. How do we do that? We're going to multiply the corresponding row and column term. So for here, what do we get? We have x to the 4 times x squared. Well, that's going to be x to the 6th, right? We're adding the exponents. The coefficient of this is 1. Here it's also 1, right? And 1 times 1 is 1. But we don't write a coefficient of 1. We just leave it blank. Leave it off, I mean. For this one, we have x to the 4 times x. That's going to be x to the 5th. X to the 4 times x to the 5th. Here, we have x to the 4 times minus 5, right? And the number you want to write in front, as I did over here. So we're going to have minus 5 times x to the 4. And again, I kept the negative sign. You want to make sure you do that. Here, we're going to have minus x cubed times x squared. We're going to have there minus x to the 5th. Right? We're adding exponents. For this one, minus x cubed times x is minus x to the 4. Right? We're adding exponents. Finally, here, we're going to have minus x cubed times minus 5. Right? So the minuses become plus, and we get 5 times x cubed. Finally, we're going to add these grid entries together to get our polynomial, our product, I mean. Notice also that we have like terms on these diagonals. That can happen. Okay? So when you're writing out the product, when you're adding up the grid entries, you can see that, oh, well, these terms are like terms, negative x to the 5 and x to the 5, so those are going to cancel. Here, we have negative x to the 4 and minus 5x to the 4. These cancel as well. And we have 5x cubed. I mean, you're not always going to get like terms, but sometimes you do. Okay, that's good. So are there any questions about this? In that case, I'll just do it this way.